by saying congratulations on the documentary. I sat down and watched it, and this is an amazing documentary, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, mate, tell us a little bit about where your journey with this doco first started.
Well, I mean, it started as a school project, actually, for uni, and it was ages ago. It was 2012, so it's taken me nearly 10 years to finish it. It was just like there was a small piece we had to do for like a TV production thing, and I got Leigh on a segment through a friend of mine, and he was really sort of interesting and entertaining and all that. And the second project I had to do was a documentary, like a 10-minute doco, and decided to do it on him.
So, mate, did you know anything about the kind of work that Leigh was doing before you met him, or was chainsaw art just something completely foreign to you?
Well, chainsaw art was, but I did, because I live only about 10 minutes from where he is, so I do remember seeing his stuff out the front for years, like since I was probably a young teenager, just driving past his house there on Main Road Eltham. You know, it's a pretty obvious sight. Most people know of it when they live in the area, and wondered about it, but didn't really know much about how it was done or anything like that. So no, it was a whole new world for me coming in to sort of film that, and obviously super interesting backdrop to a person, but obviously I discovered that it was, there's a lot more to it than just that.
Exactly. When you watch the documentary, you see so much more about Leigh's life come out. When you first did the news story and then the 10-minute doco, what was your major focus on then?
Just like a profile piece, really. So it was sort of, as I was saying, like it's quite an interesting thing, chainsaw sculpting as an art, and Leigh was an interesting guy. But it was within our first interview that we did, which went for like sort of 3 hours or something like that. That he opened up about a whole lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting, and it was like, okay, this is a lot bigger than I thought. So I did finish the 10-minute thing for school, and it was more a profile piece, sort of going into his past and everything like that, and sort of going through a bit of technique with carving and all that. But I definitely knew I wanted to do something bigger and delve into a little bit more. And I guess the film more so focuses on what unfolded as we were filming. So yeah.
So when was that decision made for you that, hey, this could be a feature-length doco?
Well, I knew after that first interview that it was going to be something bigger than just the 10-minute project, but I wouldn't have known feature length then or anything like that. It was more just a sort of exploring that sort of idea. I think I ran a crowdfunding campaign through Possible, and that sort of got things started, and it was more of a, well, okay, now I've got some funding to piece this thing together, but what's the actual film about? Because I did feel like there was more to it than just focusing on him as a profile. And so, you sort of see it in the film as we're when he's sitting down talking about his decision to climb Mount Fuji. I mean, for him to decide that in an attempt to get healthy in the moment, was on camera in the moment. That was where everything sort of started. I was like, okay, so guess we're going to Japan now, and everything sort of unfolded and grew from there.
That is one of the most amazing things with documentary filmmaking. Of course, when a director sits down to direct a feature film that's scripted, they pretty much know what's going to happen because the script is there for them. How exciting is that for you as a filmmaker when suddenly something like the Mount Fuji revelation happens during an interview? What happens inside you at that point as a filmmaker?
Well, it's super exciting, that kind of way of shooting, but it's really scary at the same time because you've got no idea, especially when, and look, I wasn't like funding from, Screen Australia or some sort of body. It was sourced by the community and everything like that, but I still felt an obligation to people that, okay, now they've given me this funding, I need to make this film. So there is that pressure to sort of create something, but I also didn't want to just create something out of, just for the sake of it. So going in the dark and just sort of, going with the flow and seeing what happens is what I prefer to do. And I think more interesting things come out of it. And they're certainly my favourite films when they, the story's unfolding for the filmmaker as it is for the audience at the same time. But you can't guarantee those things are going to happen. So there's so many little, magical accidents that sort of happened along the way. And that Mount Fuji one was just sort of the catalyst to a lot of other things that happened. And as they just kept happening, I just kept going along with it. And eventually it goes, okay, there's just like all these stories happening and all this crazy stuff. And then it was time to start putting it all together.
Now, you mentioned that this project has been going on for 8 years. How long did you actually spend filming with Leigh and working with him?
So there was the initial filming stuff in, 2012 for school, so that wasn't a hell of a lot then. The majority of filming was done over maybe 2 to 3 years, so from 2013 to 2016. And then, the editing process started, and I thought, well, first time I've done a feature, this should take a year probably, and, it took 5 years in the end, so it was a big learning curve for me. I had to sort of, learn a lot of different stuff along the way. Eventually got there, but didn't plan for it to take as long as it did. But it was also done in the meantime of, running my own business and having kids and all the rest of it too. So it was a passion piece. It wasn't like I was working on it 8 hours a day, every day for 10 years, but stretched it out over that period of time.
So how do you feel now that it's screening at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival? Is there a sense of relief that it's finally out there for people? Is it excitement? How do you feel?
Yeah, it's great. Like, it's been really good to finally finish it. And I finished it last October and started submitting it to festivals and stuff. And the response so far has been really good. It's been in a fair few sort of overseas and different places around the world. And this is the first one that it's screening at in Melbourne, which is pretty special as far as a festival goes. We had our premiere back in December, and that was really exciting. And a couple of screenings since then, but to have it here at the festival is really something important. And and I'm looking forward to being part of the festival and checking out all the other films and sort of being a part of the whole thing. Yeah.
So, what do you hope that people take away from this film? It doesn't only end up being a profile piece on Leigh; it also takes a big look at men's health and men's mental health. What do you hope that people take away from your film after they've sat down and watched it?
Well, I guess, without giving too much away, the biggest sort of underlying part of the film is the abuse that Leigh went through as a child by his one of his school teachers. And, one of the biggest things that happened so far is, through Leigh having the courage to find this guy and take him on, a bunch of other survivors came out of the woodworks through the investigation and were able to take him to court as well. Hearing stuff, I think, from our premiere that we had, some of the family of some of the survivors were there, and just the letters, emails that they wrote to me after that was, that's the most important thing, just hearing the effect it had on them. So I think if it can bring confidence to anybody who's been through that to find the courage to come forward, or even just talking about it openly, like someone like Leigh, who's quite a manly sort of, rough-looking kind of bloke that you'd imagine wouldn't talk about this stuff. For him to be able to open up and talk about it and have the effect that he did have, I think is pretty important. So getting that message across is the thing.
Now, I guess the other big question as well is where to now for you as a filmmaker? Like I said, this is an amazing documentary, and you can tell that you're a gifted filmmaker. So where to now for you?
Well, it's still, it's at that sort of in-between stage. I've been spending so long on this one project now that I do just want to work on something a lot smaller next. And, I think that the things that I'm working on at the moment, at least, planning on is a little bit more abstract, a little bit more short film type narrative pieces, probably pretty far away from the doco. But I'm sure there'll definitely be another doco at some stage. I'm just, want to go with that sense of when the idea comes, I'll know it for sure. Don't want to just jump into something just for the sake of it. So when I hear that good story, I'm sure that I'll be pretty keen to jump on board.
Definitely. Well, Ryan, we cannot wait to see what you are going to do next. But for now, what would you like to say to our listeners out there who are thinking about heading along and checking out your documentary?
Yeah, no, it'll be to see everyone who come along and see what they think. It's a film that's definitely got some darkness to it, but it's got a lot of humour, and it's a really sort of interesting story, lots of ups and downs, and it's not the sort of typical documentary that you normally see, so hopefully people get a lot out of it.